The legend of the unyielding sword. The twin suns of Eldoria hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow over the barren plains. Among the dusty craters and jagged rocks, a massive sword stood upright, embedded deep in the ground. Its blade shimmered faintly, as though alive, and strange symbols ran along its length. For centuries, the alien inhabitants of the planet revered it as both a relic and a curse. The sword had a legend. It was said to belong to an ancient warrior who fell in a great battle. Only someone deemed worthy could ever pull it from the ground. Over time, it became a symbol of power. Every few years, warriors from across the galaxy would come to Eldoria to test their strength. They grunted, strained, and even used machines, but the sword never budged. Each failed attempt was met with laughter and jeers from the locals, who grew more convinced that no one would ever claim it. One day, a human named Alex Carter landed on the planet. He wasn't a warrior or a treasure hunter, just an explorer whose ship had taken a hit from a meteor shower. Alex needed rare minerals to repair his engine, and Eldoria's markets were rumored to have exactly what he needed. As Alex walked through the bustling marketplace, he noticed a group of aliens pointing toward a distant hill. Their voices were excited, their eyes filled with anticipation. Curious, Alex approached a merchant, a scaly creature with 3 glowing eyes. "What's going on up there?" Alex asked. The merchant snorted, its leathery skin crinkling. "Another fool trying to pull the sword. Happens all the time. You'll see. It's quite entertaining." Alex frowned. A sword. What's so special about it? The merchant leaned closer, lowering its voice. "It's the sword of Eldoria. No one can pull it. Many have tried, none have succeeded. They say it chooses its wielder. Some believe it's just a story to attract fools." Intrigued, Alex decided to follow the crowd. As he climbed the hill, the sword came into view. It was massive, much larger than he had imagined. The blade seemed almost otherworldly, glowing faintly even in the sunlight. Around it, a group of aliens watched as a muscular warrior strained with all his might to pull it free. His face turned red, veins bulging, but the sword didn't move. The crowd burst into laughter. Another failure. One alien shouted. The warrior, embarrassed, slunk away as the crowd jeered. Alex stood at the edge of the crowd, his curiosity growing. He wasn't particularly strong, but something about the sword drew him in. It wasn't the promise of power or glory. There was something deeper, almost like a quiet voice calling out to him. "You there, human." A gruff voice interrupted his thoughts. Alex turned to see a tall alien with blue skin and a scar running across his face. "Don't tell me you're thinking of trying. You don't look like much." The crowd laughed, but Alex shrugged. "I'm just curious." The scared alien sneered. "Curiosity won't get you far. Only a true warrior can pull that sword. And you look like a child." Ignoring the taunts, Alex stepped closer to the sword. The crowd quieted, their mocking replaced with curiosity. Humans were rare on Eldoria, and none had ever tried to claim the sword. As Alex approached, he felt a strange energy in the air. His heart raced, and his fingers tingled. Standing before the sword, he placed his hand on the hilt. It was warm, almost as if it was alive. The symbols along the blade seemed to glow brighter. The crowd leaned in, their eyes wide. "Is it reacting to him?" someone whispered. Alex gripped the hilt tighter and gave a small tug. To his surprise, the sword vibrated slightly. Gasps erupted from the crowd. It moved. One alien shouted, "No one's ever done that before." The scared alien pushed his way to the front. Impossible. He must be cheating. Alex released the sword, stepping back in confusion. "I didn't do anything," he said, holding up his hands. But the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. Some looked at him with awe, others with suspicion. Before anyone could say more, a deep rumble shook the ground. The sword's glow intensified, and a faint hum filled the air. The crowd backed away in fear, But Alex stood frozen, staring at the blade. "Human," a voice growled. Alex turned to see a towering alien warlord approach, his armor gleaming and his eyes burning with anger. "That sword belongs to the warriors of Eldoria. You have no right to touch it." Alex took a step back, his heart pounding. "I didn't mean to." The warlord cut him off. "Leave now or face the consequences." The crowd fell silent, waiting to see what Alex would do. He glanced at the sword, then at the warlord. Something deep inside him told him that this was only the beginning. A challenge unforeseen. The golden glow of the twin suns was fading as the evening settled over the barren plains of Eldoria. Alex Carter stood in the shadow of the sword, the crowd's shocked whispers echoing around him. His fingers tingled, the strange warmth of the sword's hilt still lingering in his hand. But the atmosphere grew heavier as the towering warlord stepped forward, his massive frame dwarfing Alex. The warlord, known as Kraith, was infamous on Eldoria. His victories in countless battles had earned him the title Champion of Blades. His crimson armor, adorned with scars and trophies from past conquests, gleamed in the fading sunlight. The alien crowd parted as he approached, their expressions a mix of reverence and fear. "You dare touch the sacred blade." Kraith's voice was deep and resonant, carrying an authority that demanded attention. "A mere human. Do you know the weight of what you've done?" Alex gulped, feeling the intensity of Kraith's gaze. "I didn't mean any disrespect," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I was just curious." "Curiosity," Kraith sneered, his mandibles clicking. "Curiosity is a weakness. This sword is no trinket for you to toy with. It belongs to the strong, not to fragile creatures like you." The crowd murmured in agreement, emboldened by Kraith's words. Alex could feel their eyes on him, mocking and dismissive. He took a step back, but then something inside him stirred, a quiet defiance, a refusal to be belittled. "I didn't see anyone else move it," Alex said, his voice calm but firm. The murmurs stopped, replaced by a sharp intake of breath from the crowd. Kraith's eyes narrowed. "You think that makes you worthy?" Kraith growled. "The sword has tested countless warriors, and none have succeeded. You are no different." Alex shrugged, trying to mask his fear. "Maybe the sword decides who's different." Kraith's face twisted in anger, but before he could reply, a smaller alien stepped forward. It was an elderly being, its hunched figure wrapped in a tattered cloak. Despite its frailty, its eyes sparkled with wisdom and a hint of mischief. "Enough, Kraith," the elder said, its voice soft but commanding. "The sword has chosen to react to this human. Whether you like it or not, it means something." Kraith growled, but he didn't argue. The elder turned to Alex, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Tell me, human," the elder said, "why did you touch the sword?" Alex hesitated, unsure of how to explain the strange pull he felt. "I don't know," he admitted. "It felt like it was calling to me." The elder nodded, as if satisfied. "Then the sword sees something in you. But beware, it does not choose lightly. If you pursue this path, it will test you." Kraith snorted. "Tests mean nothing. Strength decides everything. Let the human prove himself if he thinks he's worthy." The elder frowned but didn't object. The crowd erupted in cheers and shouts, eager for a spectacle. Alex's stomach tightened. "Prove myself." "How?" Kraith stepped closer, his imposing figure casting a long shadow over Alex. "A duel," he declared. "Face me, human. If you win, I will allow you to attempt to cling the sword again. If you lose, you leave Eldoria and never return." The crowd roared its approval, the excitement palpable. Alex glanced at the sword, its faint glow seeming to pulse in time with his heartbeat. He wasn't a fighter, and the thought of facing someone like Kraith was terrifying. But something about the sword's energy gave him a strange confidence, a sense that he was meant to be here. "Fine." Alex said, surprising himself with his own boldness. I accept. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Kraith's lips curled into a predatory grin. Then prepare yourself, human. You'll regret this. As the crowd dispersed to prepare for the duel, Alex stood alone by the sword. The elder approached him quietly, their cloak fluttering in the breeze. You're either very brave or very foolish, the elder said. Probably both, Alex replied, forcing a smile. Do you think I have a chance? The elder tilted their head, their expression unreadable. The sword reacted to you for a reason. It sees something within you that others cannot. But remember this, the sword does not grant power. It reveals it. With that cryptic advice, the elder turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Alex to prepare for the challenge of a lifetime. The dual suns dipped below the horizon, and the first stars began to appear, their light casting an eerie glow over the sword. As Alex stared at the blade, he felt a mixture of fear and determination. He had no idea what lay ahead, but one thing was clear. His journey with the sword was only beginning. The first awakening. The arena was set, a circle of jagged rocks and loose sand surrounded by a jeering crowd. The twilight sky above Eldoria was painted in shades of crimson and purple, the twin moons casting an eerie glow over the battlefield. Alex Carter stood at the center of the ring, clutching a rusted iron staff handed to him by the elder. It was a poor excuse for a weapon, but it was all he had. Across from him, Kraith loomed like a mountain, his crimson armor reflecting the flickering torches that lined the arena. The rules of the duel were simple. Survive. Kraith made it clear that he wasn't interested in just winning. He wanted to humiliate Alex in front of everyone. The crowd roared as the warlord unsheathed his massive blade, a weapon nearly as long as Alex was tall. The blade's edge gleamed with a dangerous sharpness, and Alex felt a pang of doubt. What had he gotten himself into? Do you regret your decision yet, human? Kraith taunted, his deep voice dripping with amusement. You could still walk away, if you crawl on your knees and beg. Alex gritted his teeth, gripping the staff tighter. Let's just get this over with. The crowd erupted in laughter, and Kraith chuckled darkly. Very well. I'll make it quick. With a roar, Kraith charged forward, his blade swinging in a deadly arc. Alex barely managed to leap aside, the force of the strike kicking up a cloud of dust. The ground shook from the impact, and Alex stumbled, struggling to regain his footing. Kraith was relentless, his attacks coming faster and harder. Alex used the staff to block, but each blow sent a jarring vibration through his arms. It felt like trying to stop a freight train with a twig. The crowd cheered louder with each near miss, their excitement growing with every second. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't a soldier or a fighter. He was just an explorer. How could he possibly survive against someone like Kraith? But then, something strange happened. As Alex dodged another strike, the sword, the ancient blade embedded in the stone, began to glow faintly. At first, no one noticed, but as Kraith swung his blade again, the glow intensified. Alex caught the movement out of the corner of his eye, and for a moment, it was as if the sword was calling to him. Focus, human. Kraith growled, his blade slicing through the air. Alex ducked just in time, the attack missing him by inches. The crowd gasped, their attention now split between the duel and the glowing sword. The elder, watching from the edge of the arena, narrowed their eyes. It's awakening, they muttered under their breath. Alex didn't know what was happening, but he felt the same pull he'd experienced when he first touched the sword. It was as if an invisible thread connected him to the blade, urging him to reach for it. Another swing from Kraith's blade snapped Alex back to reality, and he rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding a fatal blow. You can't run forever, Kraith shouted, his frustration mounting. Face me. Alex scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. The staff in his hands was useless. It wouldn't withstand another hit. He glanced at the glowing sword, its light pulsating like a heartbeat. Could he reach it in time? Would it even help him? Kraith charged again, his blade raised high. Alex made a split-second decision. Instead of retreating, he darted toward the sword. The crowd erupted in confusion and disbelief. Kraith roared in anger, realizing Alex's intent. "You dare!" Kraith's words were cut off as Alex reached the sword. Without hesitation, Alex wrapped his hands around the hilt and pulled with all his might. The ground trembled, and a blinding light erupted from the blade. The crowd fell silent, their jeers replaced with stunned gasps. Alex felt a surge of energy coursing through him, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. The symbols on the sword's blade lit up in brilliant gold, and the faint hum he'd felt earlier grew into a deafening resonance. Kraith stopped in his tracks, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he growled. The sword, now fully free from the stone, felt weightless in Alex's hands. Its glow spread outward, bathing the arena in golden light. The crowd shielded their eyes, and even the elder looked surprised. Before Alex could fully process what was happening, the light coalesced into a beam that shot toward the sky. The heavens seemed to respond, the twin moons dimming as the beam pierced the clouds. A low, rumbling voice echoed across the plains, though its source was unclear. "The wielder has been chosen." Alex's grip tightened on the sword as the light faded, leaving the arena in stunned silence. He turned to face Kraith, who stood frozen, his blade lowered. The warlord's expression was a mix of rage and fear. "The duel is over," the elder declared, stepping forward. Their voice was calm but carried an undeniable authority. "The sword has chosen this human as its wielder. The challenge has been fulfilled." The crowd erupted in chaos, some cheering, others protesting. Kraith took a step back, his hands trembling. This isn't over," he snarled, before retreating into the shadows. Alex, still clutching the sword, looked at the elder. "What just happened?" The elder smiled faintly. "You've passed the first test, human. But the sword's trials are far from over." As the crowd dispersed, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his journey was only beginning. The sword, now quiet in his hand, felt heavier than ever, not physically, but with the weight of destiny. Battling the Guardian. The golden glow of the ancient sword still lingered in the air as the crowd dispersed, their shocked murmurs echoing into the distance. Alex Carter stood in the now empty arena, the weight of the blade in his hand a stark reminder of what he had just done. He pulled the sword of Eldoria, something no being in history had ever accomplished. But the eerie silence that followed felt unnatural, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The elder approached him, their cloak billowing slightly in the cool night breeze. "The sword recognizes you," they said softly, their eyes narrowing. "But its recognition is only the beginning. Its true power comes with a cost, a challenge." Before Alex could respond, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. The torches surrounding the arena flickered violently, casting distorted shadows against the rocky walls. The faint hum of the sword grew louder, resonating through Alex's body. "What's happening?" Alex asked, his voice laced with panic. The elder's expression darkened. "The Guardian awakens." A deep guttural roar split the air, sending shivers down Alex's spine. From beneath the earth, cracks began to form, glowing with molten energy. The crowd, who had only moments ago been dispersing, turned back in shock as the ground erupted in a shower of rocks and dust. From the fissure emerged a massive creature, its body a mix of shimmering obsidian and pulsing crimson veins. Its 6 glowing eyes locked onto Alex, and its maw opened to reveal rows of jagged teeth. The Guardian was unlike anything Alex had ever seen, half organic, half machine, and entirely terrifying. It towered over him, its spiked tail thrashing behind it, leaving deep gashes in the rocky terrain. "What is that?" Alex whispered, gripping the sword tightly. The elders stepped back, their voice calm but grave. "The Guardian is the sword's protector. It exists to test those who dare to claim its power." If you are truly the chosen wielder, you must defeat it. Defeat that, Alex exclaimed, pointing at the towering beast. You've got to be kidding me. The Guardian roared again, the sound deafening, and charged forward. Its massive claws tore through the ground as it closed the distance between them in mere seconds. Alex barely managed to leap out of the way, the impact of its strike sending a shockwave that knocked him off his feet. Use the sword, Alex, the elder shouted, their voice carrying over the chaos. It will guide you. Alex scrambled to his feet, his heart racing. The sword felt impossibly heavy in his hand, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat. He had no idea how to use it. He wasn't a warrior, and he had never fought anything in his life, let alone a monstrous alien guardian. The guardian lunged again, its claws aimed directly at him. On instinct, Alex raised the sword. The blade's glow intensified, and a barrier of golden light erupted in front of him. The creature's claws collided with the barrier, sending sparks flying. For a moment, the two forces clashed, the sword's energy barely holding the guardian at bay. Alex felt the sword's hum deepen, almost like it was speaking to him. Images flashed through his mind, movements, strategies, techniques he couldn't possibly know. It was as if the blade was downloading centuries of combat knowledge directly into his brain. The guardian pulled back, its 6 eyes narrowing in frustration. Alex seized the moment, stepping forward and swinging the sword. A wave of golden energy arced through the air, slamming into the creature and forcing it back. The crowd erupted in gasps and cheers, their fear momentarily overshadowed by awe. But the guardian wasn't done. It reared up on its hind legs, its tail whipping around with terrifying speed. Alex ducked just in time, the tail missing him by inches, but demolishing a nearby rock formation. The creature's movements became faster, more precise, as if it was adapting to Alex's newfound abilities. You can't fight it head-on, the elder called out. Use your surroundings. Alex glanced around, his mind racing. The arena was littered with debris from the guardian's attacks. Large boulders, jagged rocks, and patches of molten ground dotted the landscape. An idea began to form. As the guardian charged again, Alex darted to the side, leading it toward a cluster of unstable rocks. The creature followed, its claws tearing through the ground as it pursued him. At the last second, Alex leaped onto a boulder and swung the sword downward. The blade struck with precision, sending a shockwave that toppled the rock formation onto the guardian. The creature roared in fury as it was momentarily buried under the debris. Alex didn't wait for it to recover. He sprinted forward, the sword glowing brighter with each step. As the guardian began to rise, shaking off the rubble, Alex leaped into the air, the blade aimed at the creature's core. Time seemed to slow. The sword's glow became blinding, and Alex felt a surge of power unlike anything he had ever experienced. He brought the blade down with all his strength, striking the guardian squarely in its chest. The impact created a massive shockwave, the golden light consuming both Alex and the creature. When the dust settled, Alex stood panting, the sword still glowing faintly in his hand. The guardian lay motionless, its body slowly dissolving into a mist of light. The crowd was silent, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. The elder stepped forward, their voice steady. You have passed the guardian's test, Alex. The sword recognizes you as its true wielder. But this is only the beginning. Alex stared at the blade, its hum now a quiet whisper, the weight of what he had just done. And what lay ahead pressed heavily on him. For better or worse, his journey with the sword of Eldoria had truly begun. Claiming the sword's purpose, the crowd's stunned silence was quickly replaced by murmurs of disbelief and awe. Alex stood in the middle of the arena, the sword of Eldoria still glowing faintly in his hand. His breath came in ragged gasps, his body trembling from the sheer effort it had taken to defeat the guardian. The once massive creature had dissolved into particles of light, scattering into the night sky. but the energy of the sword still pulsed through him, as if alive and aware of his every move. From the edge of the arena, the elder stepped forward, their expression unreadable. The gathered aliens parted to make way, their gazes fixed on Alex. For the first time, there was no mockery in their eyes, only a cautious respect tinged with fear. "You have done what no other has achieved," the elder said, their voice echoing in the stillness. "The Guardian's defeat marks you as the chosen wielder of the sword. But this is not the end of your trials. It is only the beginning." Alex tightened his grip on the sword, its warmth both comforting and intimidating. "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside him. Before the elder could respond, a loud voice boomed from the crowd. It was Kraith, the warlord who had challenged Alex earlier. His crimson armor was streaked with dust, but his presence was no less commanding. "This is a farce," Kraith bellowed, stepping into the arena. "The sword belongs to the strong, not to some fragile human who stumbled into its favor. I demand a proper contest for its ownership." The crowd erupted in agreement, their earlier respect for Alex wavering. Murmurs of "the human is unworthy," and "Kraith should be the wielder," rippled through the audience. Alex felt a knot of frustration tightening in his chest. No matter what he did, it seemed he would always have to prove himself. The elder raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Kraith, you witnessed the Guardian's test. The sword chose Alex as its wielder. Do you dare to challenge the will of the blade?" Kraith sneered, his eyes burning with defiance. "The sword's will means nothing without strength to back it up. I challenge the human to a duel. No tricks, no guardians. Let the strongest claim the sword." Alex glanced at the elder, who nodded solemnly. "The sword's power must be earned, Alex. If you accept, the duel will be your final test." He looked at the sword, its faint hum resonating in his hand. He could feel it urging him forward, as if it was alive, watching, waiting to see what he would do. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, but alongside it came a quiet determination. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for whatever purpose the sword had chosen him for. "I accept," Alex said, his voice steady. The arena erupted into chaos as the crowd cheered, jeered, and clamored for blood. Kraith's grin widened, and he drew his massive blade, its jagged edge glinting menacingly in the torchlight. "This time, human," Kraith growled. "There will be no tricks to save you." The elders stepped back, raising their arms to signal the start of the duel. "The one who stands victorious shall claim the sword's destiny. Begin." Kraith charged immediately, his blade slicing through the air with terrifying speed. Alex raised the sword of Eldoria just in time to block, the clash of metal ringing out across the arena. The force of the impact nearly knocked him off his feet, but the sword absorbed much of the blow, its energy pulsing in rhythm with his movements. Unlike the Guardian, Kraith was precise and relentless, his attacks designed to exploit every weakness. Alex found himself on the defensive, each strike pushing him closer to the edge of the arena. The crowd roared with every near hit, their excitement feeding Kraith's aggression. "You're nothing without the sword," Kraith taunted, swinging his blade in a deadly arc. "And even with it, you're weak." Alex gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He couldn't match Kraith's strength or skill, not directly. But as he blocked another strike, the sword's hum deepened and a strange calm washed over him. Images flashed in his mind. Strategies, movements, and techniques. The sword wasn't just a weapon, it was a guide. Instead of meeting Kraith's next strike head-on, Alex sidestepped, using the warlord's momentum against him. Kraith stumbled, momentarily off balance, and Alex seized the opportunity. He slashed at Kraith's exposed side, the blade's golden energy leaving a deep gash in his armor. The crowd gasped as Kraith roared in anger, spinning around to face Alex. "You'll pay for that," he snarled, his attacks growing more erratic. Alex dodged and parried, each movement guided by the sword's subtle pulses. It was as if he and the blade were moving as one, their synergy growing stronger with each passing moment. He began to see openings in Kraith's defenses, exploiting them with quick, precise strikes. The tide of the battle shifted. Kraith's confidence faltered as Alex pressed the advantage, his movements fluid and deliberate. The crowd, once cheering for Kraith, fell silent as they watched the human overpower their champion. With a final decisive blow, Alex disarmed Kraith, sending his massive blade clattering to the ground. The warlord fell to his knees, his chest heaving as he glared up at Alex. The elder stepped forward, their voice calm but firm. "The duel is over. Alex Carter has proven himself worthy. The sword of Eldoria is his." The crowd erupted into chaos once more, some cheering, others protesting. But Alex didn't hear them. He looked down at Kraith, who still knelt before him, defeated but unbroken. "You fought well," Alex said quietly, lowering the sword. "But this isn't about strength alone. The sword chose me, and I intend to honor that." Kraith's gaze softened, and after a long moment he nodded. "Perhaps the sword sees something we cannot." As the crowd slowly dispersed, the elder approached Alex, their expression thoughtful. "You have claimed the sword's purpose, Alex, but your true journey begins now. The blade carries a destiny far greater than this world. Are you ready to face it?" Alex stared at the sword, its glow faint but steady. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: he was no longer the same man who had landed on Eldoria. "I'm ready," he said. The true test. The eerie calm that followed Alex's victory in the duel didn't last long. The sword of Eldoria, now firmly in his grasp, continued to emit a soft, golden glow, its hum steady but almost contemplative, as if it were bracing for what was to come. The alien crowd dispersed slowly, some murmuring approval, others clearly discontent with the human's newfound status. Alex watched them go, feeling a mix of relief and unease. The sword may have chosen him, but the weight of its purpose pressed heavily on his shoulders. The elder approached Alex, their expression a mixture of pride and caution. "You've proven yourself to the sword and to the people of Eldoria," they said, "but the trials are far from over. The blade has only revealed the beginning of its true power." Alex frowned, wiping the sweat from his brow. "What does that even mean?" "I defeated the Guardian, won the duel. What else is there?" The elder tilted their head, their gaze piercing. "The sword is a beacon, Alex. It awakens not only its wielder, but also the forces tied to its history. And not all those forces will welcome its return." Before Alex could question further, the ground beneath them began to rumble. A low, resonant vibration echoed through the air, growing louder with each passing moment. The alien crowd stopped in their tracks, turning their eyes to the horizon. The distant glow, faint at first, began to pulse in rhythm with the sword's hum. "What's happening?" Alex asked, gripping the hilt tighter. The elder's expression darkened. The ancient threat the sword was forged to confront. It has sensed the blade's awakening. From the horizon, a massive, shifting shadow began to take form. As it drew closer, Alex could make out the silhouette of a colossal alien warship, its jagged design unlike anything he had ever seen. The ship's surface glowed with crimson veins of energy, and its engines emitted a deep, bone-rattling hum. The air around it seemed to distort, as if reality itself was bending under its presence. The elder's voice was grave. "That is the Harbinger, an ancient force that the sword was created to oppose. Its arrival means only one thing: war." Alex's pulse quickened. War? Against what? The elder turned to him, their expression unreadable. "Against the force that seeks to enslave or destroy all life. The Harbinger is merely its vanguard. And now, Alex, as the wielder of the sword, you are at the center of this conflict." The alien crowd began to panic, their fear palpable as the Harbinger loomed closer. Soldiers scrambled to fortify defenses, while others fled toward the distant hills. Alex's mind raced. He had fought Kraith, defeated the Guardian. But this was something entirely different. This was a war against a foe he couldn't even comprehend. What am I supposed to do? Alex demanded, his voice rising with frustration. I'm just one person with a sword. How am I supposed to fight something like that? The elder placed a hand on his shoulder, their voice calm but firm. The sword chose you for a reason, Alex. It sees what you cannot yet see in yourself, but it does not fight alone. The power of the sword is not in its strength. It is in its ability to unite. Unite? Alex repeated, shaking his head. These people barely even trust me. How am I supposed to unite them? Before the elder could answer, a deafening blast echoed through the air. The Harbinger's cannons fired, sending a beam of energy hurtling toward the planet's surface. The blast struck a distant mountain, obliterating it in an instant. The shockwave rippled across the plains, knocking many to the ground, including Alex. The elder pulled Alex to his feet, their expression urgent. You don't have time to doubt yourself. If you hesitate, everything will be lost. Alex clenched his jaw, gripping the sword tightly. The blade's hum grew louder, resonating with the Harbinger's ominous energy. He could feel it guiding him, urging him to act. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, raising the sword high. Listen to me, Alex shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The crowd turned to him, their fear mingling with a sliver of hope. I know you don't trust me. I know I'm not one of you, but this sword chose me for a reason, and I'm not going to let this planet fall without a fight. The aliens exchanged uncertain glances, but Alex pressed on. I can't do this alone. None of us can. If we want to survive, we have to stand together. The sword has power, but it's nothing without the people who believe in it. Help me protect your world, our world. For a moment, there was silence. Then, to Alex's surprise, Kraith stepped forward. The warlord's armor was dented and scorched from their duel, but his presence was as commanding as ever. He locked eyes with Alex, his expression unreadable. You've shown more courage than I thought possible, human, Kraith said, his voice carrying a grudging respect. If the sword sees you as its wielder, then I will fight by your side. One by one, others stepped forward, warriors, engineers, and eager farmers, each driven by a spark of hope ignited by Alex's words. The elder nodded approvingly, their gaze softening. This is the sword's true power, they said, not to destroy, but to inspire, to bring people together against the impossible. As the Harbinger's shadow fell over the arena, Alex felt the weight of his responsibility settle fully on his shoulders. He wasn't just a wielder, he was a leader. And as the sword's glow intensified, he knew one thing for certain. The fight for Eldoria was about to begin. A new destiny. The Harbinger loomed overhead, its massive form blocking out the light of Eldoria's twin moons. Crimson beams of energy pulsed along its surface, illuminating the battlefield below. Alex Carter stood at the forefront of the gathered forces, the sword of Eldoria in his hand glowing with a brilliance that seemed to push back the oppressive darkness of the alien warship. The air was heavy with anticipation, the silence broken only by the hum of the sword and the distant thrum of the Harbinger's engines. Alex took a deep breath, the weight of the sword resting heavily in his grip. Behind him stood the warriors of Eldoria, aliens of all shapes and sizes, united in their shared fear and determination. Among them was Kraith, the warlord who had once challenged Alex, but now stood as his fiercest ally. To Alex's left, the elder watched with quiet intensity, their presence a steadying force in the chaos. This is it, Alex said, turning to face the crowd. This is the moment we decide what kind of world we leave behind. The Harbinger isn't just here to destroy. It's here to enslave, to take away everything we'd fought for. The crowd murmured, their fear palpable. Alex raised the sword, its golden light casting long shadows across the battlefield. But we have something they don't. We have the will to fight, to stand together. This sword isn't just a weapon. It's a promise. A promise that we won't go down without a fight. Kraith stepped forward, his voice booming. We fight together. For Eldoria. For freedom. The crowd erupted in cheers, their fear giving way to a defiant roar. Alex turned back to the Harbinger, his heart pounding. He didn't know if they could win, but he knew they had to try. The sword's hum deepened, resonating with his determination, and for a moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. The first attack came swiftly. The Harbinger's cannons roared to life, sending a barrage of energy blasts hurtling toward the planet's surface. Alex reacted instinctively, raising the sword. A shield of golden light erupted around the gathered forces, the blast striking harmlessly against its surface. The strain of holding the barrier was immense, but Alex gritted his teeth and held firm. Go, he shouted to the warriors behind him. I'll cover you. Take out their ground forces. Kraith led the charge, his crimson armor gleaming as he rallied the fighters. Alien warriors surged forward, their weapons blazing as they engaged the Harbinger's robotic ground troops, which had begun to deploy from the massive ship. The battlefield erupted into chaos, the clash of metal and the roar of energy weapons filling the air. Alex moved to join the fray, the sword of Eldoria guiding his every step. Each swing of the blade sent arcs of golden energy slicing through the enemy ranks. The sword felt like an extension of his own body, its power surging through him with every strike. He fought alongside the warriors of Eldoria, their courage bolstered by his presence. But the Harbinger was relentless. More and more troops poured from the ship, their numbers threatening to overwhelm the defenders. Alex knew they couldn't hold out forever. He needed to end this, and fast. The Elder appeared at his side, their voice urgent. The Harbinger's core is its weakness. Destroy it, and the ship will fall. How do I get to it? Alex asked, dodging a blast from a robotic sentinel. The Elder pointed to a series of glowing conduits running along the battlefield. Follow those. They lead directly to the core. But be warned, Alex. The Harbinger will do everything in its power to stop you. Alex nodded, his grip tightening on the sword. I've come this far. I'm not stopping now. With the Elder's guidance, Alex pushed forward, cutting a path through the enemy forces. Kraith and a group of warriors flanked him, their combined efforts clearing the way. The closer they got to the Harbinger, the more intense the resistance became. Massive sentinels, towering over the battlefield, descended from the ship, their glowing eyes locked onto Alex. Keep moving, Kraith shouted, hurling a spear at one of the sentinels. The weapon struck true, but the creature barely flinched, its focus fixed on Alex. The sword pulsed in his hand, its light growing brighter as he faced the towering foe. Alex raised the blade, and a beam of golden energy shot forth, striking the sentinel in its core. The massive creature let out a deafening roar before collapsing in a heap of twisted metal. The path to the Harbinger's core was finally clear. Alex turned to Kraith and the others. Hold them off as long as you can. I'll handle the rest. Kraith nodded, his expression grim but resolute. Go, human. Fulfill your destiny. With a final glance at his allies, Alex sprinted toward the Harbinger's core, the conduits leading him to a massive entrance at the base of the ship. The sword's glow illuminated the dark corridors as he made his way deeper inside, the hum growing louder with each step. At the heart of the ship, Alex found the core, a swirling vortex of crimson energy, suspended in a chamber of alien machinery. The air was thick with heat and static, the energy of the core pulsing in sync with the Harbinger's ominous hum. The moment Alex stepped into the chamber, the ship seemed to react. The walls trembled, and the core's glow intensified. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the chamber. You dare challenge the Harbinger? It boomed. You are but a speck of dust against the tide of eternity. Alex raised the sword, its golden light cutting through the oppressive darkness. "Maybe I'm just a speck," he said, his voice steady. "But even a speck can change the course of a storm." The core unleashed a torrent of energy, the chamber erupting in chaos. Alex moved on instinct, the sword guiding his every step as he dodged the blasts and struck at the core's defenses. Each hit sent shockwaves through the ship, the Harbinger groaning as its structure began to falter. Finally, with one last, powerful strike, Alex drove the sword of Eldoria into the core. The golden blade pierced the vortex, and a brilliant explosion of light consumed the chamber. The Harbinger let out a final, anguished roar before the energy dissipated, and the ship began to collapse. Alex stumbled out of the chamber, the sword still glowing faintly in his hand. The battlefield was quiet, the enemy forces deactivating as the Harbinger fell. The warriors of Eldoria erupted in cheers, their victory hard-won but complete. As the dust settled, Alex looked at the sword, its hum now a gentle whisper. The elder approached him, their expression filled with quiet pride. "You have done what no one else could," they said. "The sword chose well." Alex nodded, the weight of his journey finally sinking in. He had claimed the sword, united a planet, and defeated an ancient enemy. But he knew this was only the beginning. The sword of Eldoria had chosen him not just to fight, but to lead. And as he looked out over the battlefield, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. "Let's get to work," he said.